everyone.
Hey,
and
good
thanks
morning.
for joining us live. I'm really excited about today's guest. We have Dr. John Lin with us today. And we're doing a podcast because we love what Dr. Lin is doing, not only for his patients and his business, and he does a lot giving back to the community as a physician, but also supporting other physicians. Now, Dr. Lin talked in the podcast a little bit about how video has helped him in a lot of ways. So I thought here on LinkedIn with all our healthcare providers, it would be really great to hear from a physician themselves talk about their success using video, what they do. So Dr. Lin, introduce yourself so everyone knows who you are, where you're coming from.
Good morning, everybody. I'm one of the dying breed. I'm a solo practitioner here in Gilbert, Arizona, and I'm a urologist.
Excellent. Well, if you haven't had a chance, we actually did a podcast episode very recently where we talked about a lot of these topics, episode 152. So really excited to kind of bring it to the LinkedIn Live side. We're also streaming on YouTube and on Facebook as well. So kind of getting started, Dr. Lin, as a solo practitioner, but just as a practice owner, physician in general, you said something really interesting on the podcast. I think is a good way to kick it off, that you believe as an owner, you're a marketer first, which I think is really foreign to what a lot of physicians that are listening today. So why do you believe that first and foremost?
Well, I think you can be the best person who can take out a cancerous prostate. You can be the best person who can perform a vasectomy. You can provide the smoothest experience and the least amount of discomfort to the patient in performing whatever in-office procedure. You can be that person. You can be all that. But if nobody knows about it, you're just another urologist. You're just another physician.
Amen. That's very true.
So a lot of people, it's no different. Healthcare is no different than any CPG product, any CPG brand, really, unfortunately. This is a lot of physicians don't like to admit this, but you are a commodity. It has become that way, whether or not you want to admit it. And as a commodity, you need to stand out. And one of the ways to stand out and not be like everybody else is to do a little bit of marketing. And physicians, I think most of physicians probably still think that marketing or self-promotion is kind of scammy. It's kind of like, well, frowned upon. Well, when I first started, it doesn't have to be that like that. And when I first started, it certainly felt that way. And also, and there's so much to discuss if you want to go down the rabbit hole of that imposter syndrome. Am I good enough? Why am I talking about what I do? But you know what? It works. If you want to see the patients that you enjoy seeing and interacting with the community in your area, or sometimes internationally, if you wish, the sky's the limit, really. And all you have to do is put yourself out there.
And like you said, too, you mentioned it really quickly, is the patients you enjoy seeing. And I think that's something profound, too, that I found interesting in kind of what you believe in marketing your practice and what you've learned over so many years doing it and having so much success is you really can build a practice filled with patients and doing procedures that you enjoy and avoid physician burnout and all those buzzwords that you hear.
Well, so much of it is that physicians feel like we have, I think a lot of the burnout comes from lack of control over your environment, lack of control over your payers, lack of control over the amount of hoops that you have to jump through, lack of control over how you can schedule your patients. And some of that comes from being an employee. So if, that's something else that you have to consider. Are you better being an employee, or are you better being someone who starts his own practice, or are you better working in a small private practice? Believe it or not, the American Urologic Association did a survey in 2020, and 23% of private practices are solo practices. So that's an interesting fact.
Interesting. Yeah. Especially with the climate right now. And like you said, you're a dying breed. It's very different. And I know a lot of people have messaged me recently even about private practice and what they can do and some of the challenges. But I want to give a shout out to Tiffany. Hey, Tiffany, good to see you here today. Thanks for joining. And everyone else, thank you so much for dropping in. Dr. Lin, so you decided you're going to market yourself. You're going to put yourself out there. And like you just said, it's kind of, well, I said it, but you said it first, is it felt spammy or uncomfortable or awkward. And I know when I even market as physician liaison or digital marketing, all physicians feel like it's a little bit taboo to go out there and say, this is what I do and I'm great at it. So how did you get started marketing yourself with content?
First, okay, so video content is by far the most efficient. I'm all into efficiency. I don't know, maybe it's a surgeon in me, maybe because
you should as a physician.
Maybe I started life a little bit later, so I feel like I have to catch up. So I didn't get married until I was in my late 30s, and coming to the States as an immigrant, I had to fight a little bit of discrimination, a little bit of social awkwardness, and the language barrier is huge. So I think I always feel like I'm behind, and I feel like I always have to catch up, and efficiency is incredibly important to me. So I started thinking, what is the best way to get someone to recognize that, hey, I'm a person and I'm pretty good at what I do? Well, video is probably the best way to do so. No one's going to buy anything from you, service or product wise, unless they, as you all know, marketers, unless they know you, they like you, and they trust you. Right. The best way to convey that message is through video. And you know what is more important, even more effective, is not video coming from me. Yes, video coming from me is great, but what is even more effective is video coming from a patient. Now, patient testimonials, that's a whole different realm that is even more effective than me talking about what I do.
Right. Well, that's perfect because Tiffany just asked.
That's right on cue.
You almost did that right on cue. How did you get your patients to consent to being on video, Dr. Lin?
Okay, so obviously your institution is going to vary depending on what they're comfortable doing. As a solo practitioner, I felt comfortable getting a video consent. So video consent. At the end of so I would ask, you all have a ton of happy patients. Your patients are mostly going to be happy with you. So that's something else we can talk about if you want. Reviews. Don't be afraid to ask for reviews.
Yes.
Reviews are hugely important.
Starts by asking, not passively, but actively.
Yes. Proactively ask. Proactively instead of once they leave the door. But how do I get consent? Huge. I mean, I'm a big privacy guy, and I actually just interviewed someone about compliance, and you can probably see it on my LinkedIn feed. But compliance and HIPAA, huge. So how do I get patient consent? Your institution may want to come up with a form to have the patient sign, but I think I find that a little bit awkward. I think it's a lot more natural for me to ask the patient if they would not mind me sharing the video with other people who may be interested in the content. And I do that. I capture that at the end of the video first, patients happy with me. I would say, hey, I think a lot of people would love to hear what you went through, and would resonate with your story. Would you mind sharing what you went through? And of course, most people are happy to share. And I find that very rarely do patients not want to share their journey. People are eager to share their stories. And so I will ask, would you mind sharing your story? And then I would bring in a very simple camera setup. You know how I started?
How?
With this device right here.
Man, I love it. You got to get started, and what you've got in your pocket is worth hundreds of millions of dollars 20 years ago.
My gosh, this is a game changer in so many aspects. So this is what I did to start, to capture patient testimonials. And believe it or not, it is still how I do it today. So I have I've progressed on. I have a tripod set up, and I have a microphone, a wireless microphone, and I hook it up to this device, and that is how I create patient testimonial video content today.
That is fantastic.
You don't need anything fancy. You don't need any fancy studio like what I have, and it's inconvenient for the patient to have to come back to coordinate with someone on your team to record and makeup, whatever. Lighting, a lot easier and a lot more natural to just use. Everybody's used to doing selfies. A lot of people are doing selfies. So it's very second nature nowadays. Use your cell phone. Don't have to don't have to be overly fancy. You can up your game on your cell phone by getting an external microphone and things like that. But you don't need anything fancy. And for the physicians, here's a tip for the marketers. For the physicians who are a little camera shy, how I started with my video is, believe it or not, Snapchat. When you could record 10-second video,
sure.
And if you don't like it, don't post it. If you don't like it, you don't even have to post it. You can just point the camera at yourself and then talk into the camera. Believe it or not, it is not natural to be looking at that little black hole right there and realizing that there's a whole world out there. Everybody's listening, everybody's watching. It is not normal to be looking at that. So a little bit of practice goes a long way. And here's one final, hopefully a little push for you, for the physicians. In about 2017, I was performing a vasectomy. I walked into the room, and this young man says, "Hey, Dr. Lin, do you mind if I live stream the vasectomy?" I had a patient who had his phone on, who was live streaming me walking into the procedure room, and he live streamed his vasectomy on Facebook. He didn't point. Wow. He didn't point down but he live streamed the experience.
Yeah. Okay.
And he made that public. It's a public video. So if physicians understand, so during the live stream, because I knew how that platform worked, I was able to interact with his audience.
Yep.
So you get to showcase his phenomenal experience during his vasectomy, and you get to showcase yourself, your personality, and because you understand how the platform works, you're able to interact with the audience, with his audience. That video has had probably tens of thousands of views.
That's so crazy.
That's amazing.
I want to say hello to everyone from Texas. Looks like it's popular from Texas.
Dallas.
And thank you, Catherine, for joining, and Jennifer. We have a question for your social media really quick. How can people find you on social media? And then talk about the platform you found to be the most successful or most comfortable for you to share content.
So the hot platform right now, let's see. Well, TikTok is still pretty hot. Snapchat kind of waning. A lot of people are jumping onto Instagram, but you kind of have to be contextual in how you want to do marketing. You have to find where most of your potential patients are hanging out. And the older platform, much more mature, is Facebook. Also, penetration of Facebook is huge. Segmentation that you can do. I don't do much advertising on Facebook. Sorry, Facebook. I own a lot of your stocks, but I don't spend a lot of money on Facebook. But if you want to spend just $1 or $2, if you want, pick a small demographic. You can, healthcare is so regional. You don't have to be everything to everybody. Just pick a small area and then put out a little bit of interesting content and see how that does. So you don't have to spend a lot of money. Facebook has the largest or the widest demographic, so I like Facebook.
And we use speaking of that, you don't have to really invest a lot of money to help get your content visible. There's like what a lot of people call the $1 a day strategy, which, just as it sounds, about $30 a month that you're spending, and you just put a little bit of really targeted money behind your posts that are just focusing on re-engaging your organic users that are already going to your website. They're familiar with your content, because unfortunately Facebook shut their organic reach down to about 1% to 2%.
1%, yeah.
You can use $1, legitimately $1, to get in front of a large swath of your already engaged audience consistently, and it's $1 a day.
And to finally answer the question, how do people get a hold of me? You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter at JCLINMD.
And you also have, too, we haven't talked about it yet, you have a massive urology focused Facebook group for any urologists or urology focused practice admins that are out there looking to network. Let's talk a little bit about that, too.
So and into that platform, I also create a lot of video content. It's called the Thriving Urology Practice Facebook group. The Thriving Urology Practice Facebook group. It is free, and as I like to say, if it's free, I'll take 3. So it's a free platform, and there's only about 1,400 of us. Not that big. It's 1,400 U.S.-based urology practices. So our problems are very much the same across the board. We face the same payer issues. We face the same compliance issues. And when we get together and crowdsource practice management solutions so that we can help build thriving practices so that you can work happily, professionally, financially, and personally.
I love that too, because that's what you talked about a little bit in the podcast. Is not only is social media groups such a great way to get your content out there and build a targeted audience, but you used it to collaborate, support, give advice, and share with other urologists and professionals and colleagues. And I love that, because even with my own groups that I create, that's what it's all about. It's not about selling content all the time. It's sometimes the value you can get out of it too is the fact that you get to interact with people online that you would never have in a room all together to talk about exactly something or share something or support. And I really love that you talked about that in the podcast, was like paying it forward and helping others in your space and not holding that information private and letting all your secrets go.
Well, that's the thought process in the past, where you hold everything close to the chest, close to the chest, and you don't share anything with anybody. I think that is.
I hate it.
I think those days are gone.
They are gone.
If you have if you have someone a disruptor like me who is just sharing information, I have almost 56 years on this earth. One thing that I discovered is that there's only one way for you to be happy, and that is to have gratitude. I am so grateful to be in the United States, to be able to do what I do, living beyond the American dream. And now I work because I want to work and not because I have to work. This is one way to mitigate against burnout. I'm doing the same thing every single day. What makes it interesting is now I can take what I've learned and share with other people across the country, and if you want, across the world, but across the country in this case, in this Facebook group. So that's, when people ask me, well, how do you mitigate against burnout? Well, I'm constantly trying to improve what I do in my practice, as well as sharing whatever it is that I know, so that other people don't have to make the same mistakes.
I love it. What are you seeing? I mean, because obviously you've been doing this for so long from a marketing standpoint of view and building your brand and getting out there and creating content on social media. I still think there's a lag in understanding that there's a paradigm shift in terms of kind of the direct consumer style model that was so heavily reliant on the referral ecosystem, which Kelly knows is referrals are still a backbone of surgical practices, but there is a shift that's occurring in terms of, even if it's a patient that's been referred, they're going to go online and they're going to check you out. And then there's a lot of self-referral that's happening too. So talk a little about kind of what you're seeing, that shift, and how it is more advantageous that you need to get out there. I think COVID proved that point too. Get out there and start creating content.
You had a question about how you are doing your referrals.
Oh, yeah.
Reviews, not referrals. I apologize.
Okay, we will cover reviews and we'll cover referrals. Number one, referrals. I took a page out of what pharma did, or is still doing. I don't watch too much TV at all. But in the past, when I watched a little bit of TV, I would see commercials come on about certain drugs. And I'm thinking, wait, if pharma is doing that, why can't I do it as a healthcare provider? So they kind of gave me the permission, if you will, to start doing this. Sure. And then I would see online a few of the pioneers who would put out content on social media about what they do. And then I also learned from you. Thank you, Kelly and Justin, all the awesome content that you put out there. And it resonated with me so much that there's certain strategies that you can do, and it's really just behavioral science. The principle of reciprocity, the fact, Kelly and Justin, that you put out so much awesome content, I feel compelled to work with you because you've given so much, and it is human nature. It is human nature to return that favor. It's wired into our brains, unless you're a sociopath, I guess. But it's wired into our brains to be to act on that reciprocity. And Robert Cialdini, many of you may have read his book on influence, written about 30 years ago. He came out with Persuasion several years ago. Very, very powerful principles when it comes to marketing. So getting that content out there is awesome, is key.
Percent.
And then we've got one more about, this is interesting too, because there's so many different ways to approach it. And I love your way is, how do you handle online reputation, and do you use a system to manage it? So talk a little bit about how you have built all those stellar reviews.
Okay. So hopefully answer the first question, the review process. Okay. Let's see. Here's a little bit of fact for you. About 80% of your customers or patients have checked you out online. Some surveys have said 80 or a little bit above 80%. It doesn't matter. 80% of your potential patients have checked you out online before they see you. And if you don't believe me, ask your new patients. Have the docs ask your new patients, or your front desk people ask your new patients, how did they find you? Three things. One, you're close to me. Number two, you're on my insurance plan. Or if you have done your social media marketing and branding well, they will pay cash to see you and have you perform a vasectomy in my case. And third, believe it or not, the third major biggie, online reviews. That is how important online reviews are. You can ask, I as a urologist, I see a lot of older patients. You may think, oh no, older patients, you're not going to reach them. I say BS. Ask your 79-year-old. I literally had a 79-year-old lady who came in and said, I found you through online and I looked you up. I picked you because of your online reviews. Everybody is checking you out. So if you don't have that presence out there, it's time to get on. As far as how do you get reviews, you can do it totally bootstrap it if you want. You can kind of like asking a patient, hey, I'm going to send you a review when you get home. You can do it via email. You can do it through texting. You can hand the patients a piece of paper. But human nature, humans are lazy. Number one, we're lazy. We want to take the path of least resistance. Yes. And number two, we want to thrive and survive. So the survival instinct is really strong, and the laziness factor is really strong. So look at how Bezos of Amazon.com fame created Amazon.com. One click buy. Click on the item, swipe right, and you're done. He has taken pretty much away all friction for us to take the action that
over money.
Hey, exactly.
Tomorrow. Yeah.
so you want to make it as easy as possible for patients to leave you a review. And by far, currently in 2021, the fastest and easiest way is texting, SMS.
Yep.
How do I ask the patients for review? Platform-wise, I've been using a service called Demand Force for many years. It's a patient reminder system, and there are tons of systems out there.
Podium's another one too out there that is HIPAA certified. So for anyone listening, Podium does reviews, reputation.
Podium, Lighthouse 360, Relation. So there are a lot of different platforms out there. You can utilize those platforms and send out SMS messages, or you can pick at the end of the day, you can pick one staff member to send out, here are the patients to whom we want to send reviews, and then send the review requests via SMS to those people. So SMS messaging is key. And also, if you are a brand, or if you are a solo practice, or if you are just starting out, there are a lot of different review sites out there for healthcare. The one that you want to concentrate on is the big daddy, Google.
Yes. Google is king, especially when it comes to local search, and the biggest influencer over local search is the reviews on your Google My Business.
And it's interesting you said SMS texting. Just before we wrap up, I want everyone to know I'll be talking at HIMSS this next week, the HIMSS conference in Vegas, about SMS texting for reviews and reputation. So if you're going to be there, let me know. I'll be joining my friends at Podium, a platform that helps you increase your reviews and reputation in healthcare, and HIPAA certified. So Dr. Lin, thank you so much for coming today. We had such a great chat. It's just so nice, isn't it, Justin, to hear from an actual physician putting these things into place. And again, like you said, it doesn't have to be a huge production. And what are the goals behind it? And I think you did a really good job.
And selfishly, I love hearing you reaffirm a lot of the stuff that either through research or just executing with clients that we have firmly believed over the years, and hearing you completely independent of us, and then now collaborating on content creation, hearing it reaffirmed of the effectiveness and that you put it into practice and seen it bear fruits is a lot of fun as well, honestly.
Yeah, it's incredible. Don't be afraid. just go out there and do it. Right now, the market is still pretty young. I mean, internet is really young. Social media marketing for healthcare is really young. I think if you just plant that stake early on, it's going to be a lot easier for you to take action now than later, because it'll be a lot more competitive as more players get into the scene.
For sure. And test out new mediums like Clubhouse, like we're doing right now. LinkedIn is still very young comparatively to the likes of Facebook. Their live feature is still not even fully rolled out. When you test new features on existing platforms or new platforms as an early adopter, the reach is typically unthrottled. And so you can really build a large audience and carve out a unique niche. So I couldn't agree more, is get active and try new things, and you'll find what works well for you.
And aside from gratitude, the other suggestion that I have for everyone is to be a sponge and look outside of your own discipline to learn about how people are marketing their practices or running their practices. Medicine is just, we're so sometimes just blindfolds on and just going one direction. But once you open up the doors to learning about negotiations, learning about marketing, learning about behavioral influences, it opens up a whole new realm. It makes your practice a lot more interesting. And if you want to do a little bit of social media, want to do a little bit of online marketing, it's fascinating what you can do to influence human behavior in a good way.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you so much for joining.
Yes, thank you so much.
Jennifer, yes, we will be resharing this live. You can reshare it on your own profile. You can share it privately, copy the link at the top. But yes, I will be resharing it. I think Dr. Lin might be resharing it. Justin will be resharing
and
it.
I'll connect with you, Jennifer, after the live too, so I can get it over to you. I'll send you a direct message.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing your insight. We're going to have you on again.
Oh, yes. 100%.
I know a lot of physicians are going to want to hear a little bit more about what you do and how you do it so successful, because we just barely talked about it today. And be sure to check out the podcast on the Patient Convert podcast.
Yeah, episode 152.
For the full interview where Dr. Lin really goes into detail about his journey, his success, and some of his pathways to content and building a following and an audience that converts to patients. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for coming. And don't forget to tell everyone how they can connect with you, Dr. Lin.
All right. Yeah. LinkedIn, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, John C. Lin MD, or you can look me up at JCLINMD on all the popular platforms.
100%.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for taking some time to have us on. And if you are in the Gilbert area, make sure to, if you ever need anything urology, go to sunriseurology.com. And that's Dr. Lin's practice as well.
And
or you can come by and I'll be happy to show you my little studio. It's a tiny little space.
Yeah, you made me jealous with it. Talk about teaching people, as you've taught me a thing or two about the dual camera setup.
We did the interview with Dr. Lin and he showed up with his cameras and I'm like, oh man, we really need to step it up. That is so much nicer than what we have.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah. So if you see us with more cameras later, it's because we copied Dr. Lin.
Again, be a sponge.
Yeah. And he sent us all the camera equipment information.
Yes.
We did not send that to him. Yeah.
Yes.
So his knowledge is definitely vast in connecting with patients. So, and don't forget, if anyone's looking for any marketing questions, insight, or advice, to check us out here on LinkedIn or interp.com.
Thank you, Dr. Lin, again.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, this way. They're the kings and queens.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Lin.
We
really appreciate that.
And stay tuned. We'll have him on again. I promise.
Bye-bye.
Bye.